This is Trackside Extra with Kevin Lee.
It's the Monday, August 17th edition of Trackside Extra, and it's a bit of an extra episode. Schedule's a little bit wonky right now, so whenever there's an opportunity, we'll chat. Thanks for joining us. The program is presented by California Closets and also by Scooch Phone Cases. So it's the day after the Ontario Honda dealers Indy at Markham on the streets of Markham, and we've got a lot to talk about there. If you're tuning in, we're going to try video again. I think this will get posted, so subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're like me and you listen to podcasts, meaning listen, then it's still on all the usual outlets. But when time permits, when the circumstance permits, I'll go ahead and add some video as well. I had to clean up today, had to shave, and put on a shirt. I wear shirts, yes, but put on a shirt with a logo if you're watching, because I did a Zoom interview with a Washington, D.C. Television station promoting the Freedom 250 this coming weekend. So we might as well turn on the camera as well. It seems the algorithms like video as well. And I got props. I got props here too. So courtesy of our friend James Hinchcliffe and Toronto Motorsports. Roger Warwick designed this. This is cool. These were the shirts that Georgia Jack and I were wearing if you were watching one of the practice shows on Saturday afternoon. 6 and the 6, the 6 broadcasters, and the 6 is, I guess I need to look that up, why it's called the 6. Is that's what the Toronto area is called. And we had a lovely weekend in Markham. I also have props to promote the Freedom 250. Fox is sending this out to media outlets to make sure they remember there's something special going on this weekend. So another diecast, and they also send out, so I got the track map right here for the weekend we can look at. I've got notes on the back that include the broadcast times for this weekend. So, yeah, we got all kinds of stuff. And maybe if I get really adventuresome when we go to the Xbox and Twitter, I'll see if I can figure out how to do like the screen grab and put that over, because as I've said, one of the reasons I don't usually do video is who wants to stare at me talking for a little while? It's really a radio show. That's what podcasts are about. But the goal still in this new venture is we find some real sponsorship, and then I hire someone to do the things that I don't understand how to do, like add a little more video and spice things up just a little bit. Speaking of spice things up, we have a lot to talk about from the weekend at Markham. It didn't get off to the greatest start. I'm not starting with that, though. We'll get to that a little later on, especially answering some of your questions. But this is kind of how I felt, by the way, when things were going poorly on Friday, and once we did get going on Saturday after the track was ready. No one's going to remember that as far as the broad audience. Most of the people watching on network television weren't aware of any issues. If you have a good race, you can still come off with a good debut event. And did they? Once again, we heard a lot of, it's going to be a track position race. Nobody can pass. You're going to need to fuel save, because nobody can pass. They passed. And the winner chose ultimately a strategy that did not involve fuel saving. So hurrah, more of this in the future. Marcus Ericsson wins. I know Hinch and Townsend are, kind of chuckling that they got it wrong up in the booth. I did too, because I thought, what's going on here? I don't see how this works. I had been told that if a caution comes out on lap 52, you're still going to pit because you can make it home, and you could, but it was fuel saving. So they decided, and this is a special circumstance, I think you had to feel like you had a fast car, and if you were out front like Marcus Ericsson was going to be, in hindsight, it's making more sense. Now, I still think they might have won had they pitted, but the danger would have been for a Marcus Ericsson if they had stopped. I think the pits ultimately opened on lap 55. If they had stopped and someone else with a quick car did not and took over the points, that car might have won. I'm a little surprised that Andretti didn't split the strategies, but part of that is you allow each pit stand to decide what they think is best. How do you decide who gets the better strategy between Willpower and Marcus Ericsson? Because obviously both felt like this is the better strategy. We have fast cars. We are going to be able to build a gap. We are going to need less fuel on the last pit stop, and that was what determined it too. I think a lot of us were looking at this 20 to 23 second time lost. Well, that's if you need a full fuel fill. But if you don't, and your tire changers nail it in 5.5 or 6 seconds, you can save a second or two. And also that right side is a shorter path. There was a clear advantage. I don't know how much. Is it a second? But it was a shorter path down the pit lane, and that's why Felix Rosenqvist chose that side. Marcus Ericsson had that side as well, and it looked like he only lost, about 17 or 18 seconds? I'd have to go back and look, but I remember I said on the pit call, and I was looking at where it was at, I think it was going to go back. If he lost 19 or 20 seconds, he was going to be 10th. Now, they were all packed together, so they picked up another 2 or 3 seconds there with the short fill and all they needed, and away we go. So I love that. This race really came down to timing, and what helped make it really entertaining was timing of a couple of cautions. Lap 15 caution comes out. That's the one for Schumacher, right? And I think the first thought by some was, well, you're somewhat past half tank, people will pit. As I talked to some people, we didn't have time to get this on the broadcast because luckily a lot was going on. But I did tell the booth this during the break. That was the number I heard. That's worst case scenario, no man's land, as in what do we do if a caution comes out on 15? If it comes out before that, if you're a leader, you're just staying out. If you're in the back, you're going to go ahead and come in. If it comes out after 20, I think you're still stopping because the feeling is it only takes a few more cautions and you're still able to do it on 2 stops. But the feeling was at 15, it's going to take a ton of caution. Highly unlikely to do it on 1 more stop. You are now in a 3-stop strategy, so we're going to stay out and hope things work out. And that's what ultimately most of them did, except it worked out for one of those that stopped in that. I think it was lap 16 is when the pits open, Romain Grosjean. And it took cautions coming out at the right time, staying out even when a couple of others didn't, late on, I think there was a caution around lap 43, and that's when we started looking at it and saying, hey, Grosjean can make it. He only needs to get to about lap 52, maybe even could pit earlier than that, and then it would just take more caution. But 52 is the number that I had heard, that with some caution and some fuel save, you can make it home. The 55 number, getting back to Ericsson's decision, was still going to take a little bit of fuel save, and I like the fact that they just decided, no, we're going to gamble on the pace of our car. And how about this? A place where we hear you can't pass, you can pass. The first 13 or 14 laps, I think we were all a little worried. We've got a parade going on because they're all driving to a fuel number. We haven't had a caution yet. And while we all said we expect calamity, we also all thought, well, we've heard this before where we expect this. Just this year in Arlington, we thought that was going to be the case. But sometimes when everyone gets really worried about just survival, they drive a little more conservative, drive a little smarter, and ultimately we don't get there. But as the tires start to wear, as patience also wears out, you're more likely to get some cautions. That's what we did. Once we got the first one, boy, did they keep coming. And maybe it's not pure, and maybe it doesn't look great, but from an entertainment standpoint, I'm here for it. And restarts are fun. I'm not responsible for paying the crash damage for these cars either, so I do feel for the team owners in these street races. But the layout was really good. And even if it was processional, the drivers said, we like this. They said, looking at it, and then after they drove it, yeah, it's a really fun track to drive. I just hope it races well. It ultimately did race well. They could pass, and it was smooth. and there were a lot of people there. I'm sure the people from Friday, not really happy. So, that's going to be part of the think as to how to appease them. Luckily, it was a free Friday. Now, I get that that's not free. You might have paid to park. There's still your time. What is that worth? You paid concession prices, and we know that buying a hot dog and a Pepsi and a beer at a racetrack or at any event gets expensive. There were a lot of people there Friday, and what I loved about this venue was there were more general admission areas. A lot of times at street races, you have walls, and if you don't buy a grandstand ticket, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of us like about road and street courses is, no, I want to wander. I don't want to be locked into one particular area, especially when it's a new event, and there's no one place I want to sit. I want to see some different areas. Now, you're always going to be better off with a good vantage point in a grandstand, and you kind of figure out the passing zones. But there were a lot of places to stand, and I guess it was Friday afternoon when we were still waiting for things to get going. Jack George and I got on a golf cart and took a lap around. And unfortunately, and we'll get to this later, there wasn't a lot of information being shared at the racetrack, so I really did feel for the fans. I wanted to just go up and tell them what's going on. Nothing's going to happen, at least for the next hour or so. So they're all there sitting in their seats at the grandstand areas and lined up along the fences, say 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock when IndyCar practice was supposed to start, because let's face it, a lot of people probably didn't even know that they were behind schedule. They may not have even known, at least some, that we should have been seeing USF cars on track or radical cars or whatever. So they're thinking 3 o'clock is what I want to see. So that gave us an indication of what the crowd was going to be like. And then people came back buying tickets on Saturday. Decent crowd on Saturday. Sunday looked good. You saw them in the television shots. Grandstands look full. Is there room to build more? That's usually what's good about street courses. You build grandstands as you sell seats. I think they might be able to think about adding more for 2027. So ended up, things worked out, especially if you're only a Saturday or a Sunday attendee. A lot of things to do, a lot of booths, a lot of visuals. I like the area. It's not walkable to downtown, but it is walkable to a really cool little town called Unionville. I'm told that's where the scene setting shots for Gilmore Girls was filmed, and just a neat little area. We had dinner there on Thursday night, and that's only a mile or two away. And Markham is a pretty big community. 370,000 people, I guess, is what it is. That's 15 minutes away. It's 15 minutes away because there's little traffic. It was probably 2 miles, because some of our group, I didn't do it. I got enough steps in during the day, but some of our group walked back from the track to the hotel in downtown Markham. So really happy for Marcus Ericsson. I'll admit, I like Marcus. I like almost, if not all of our drivers. Marcus is what you think he is. He's genuine. I see him spend a lot of time with fans, and he's one of those people I think are good for the sports, and I think he's good for his team. I've been politicking for him throughout the year, saying, I think Andretti needs to re-sign him, and I'm glad to see he's got an extension. It's probably just for 1 year. Normally and I applaud Andretti. I don't know if we've talked about that, for not saying multi-year agreement. Oftentimes that's announced, and it's not really a multi-year agreement. It's multi-year it's 1 year guaranteed sometimes, and then there are options. And if controlled by the team or based on incentives or clauses, it's not really a multi-year contract. So let's just be honest. And I think this is good for Marcus too, because now everyone knows he's available. And he's starting off finishing towards the latter stages of 2027 with a win. And if he has a good season in 2028, they'll run it back again at Andretti. Or for some reason, there's no room at the end, or they want to go try to get Joseph Newgarden, or they have to find a spot for Colton Herta and feel that's important. If he has another good year, there will be a place. And now it will be known, as we've said before, I kind of wish motorsport was like other sports where the contracts, and maybe you don't have to know exactly what the numbers are, the dollar amount, but how long is it for? Let's maybe have a boarding house that clears these contracts and makes things a little more in the up and up so people aren't arguing over, is this guy really an unrestricted free agent or not? Is he available? How complicated is it? And I've learned some more over the weekend. They are complicated. It is not straightforward as to whether certain drivers are free agents all the time. There are dates involved, and there are dates that don't often make a lot of sense. But Ericsson wins, has great pace for Andretti. They get a 1-3. We had a little drama with Ericsson getting by Power. I like how Power gets really hot in the moment, and then he has a second to think about it. And even on the cool-down lap, he's apologizing, saying, hey, I was just frustrated in the moment, happy for the team getting the 1-3 out of that. And then there's Romain Grosjean, who almost made it happen. I'm really happy that Romain didn't look at it after the race like, I almost won. And I'm really mad about that, what might have been. It was more of, we're back on the podium. Podiums for Dale Coyne Racing should matter. Romain doesn't know what his status is for next year. He's approached this year all along as, this might be my last year in high-level racing. Maybe there's sports car racing. There's no guarantee of that either. But could be the end as far as single-seater racing is concerned. I'm going to enjoy it as much as I can. I'm on the podium. You have to enjoy them. He came that close to winning. Maybe not that close because, yeah, Ericsson gapped him by 7 seconds or so. So he still had a fuel save. You know, maybe one more early caution in that last stint before Ericsson gotten through to second might have helped him. Probably not, though, because the Ericsson car, the Andretti car, was just quicker than the Dale Coyne racing car. You know, another thing, just random thought that we learned is that not only might Honda be a little bit quicker right now, but boy, do they save fuel better. They have got it figured out right now. What was the best Honda? Or, I'm sorry, the best Chevy in the race? Pato O'Ward, who somehow salvages 5th out of 23rd, but you saw that with McLaughlin towards the end. I thought he was going to get by Grosjean. I figured, well, the Penske car is better than the Dale Coyne car, and they were pretty close on when they made their last stop, I think. I can probably find that in my screen grab of notes. McLaughlin made his last stop 2 laps later during the caution on 55. Remember, Grosjean was in the pits when Kirkwood crashed, so he should have had just a teeny bit more fuel than Grosjean did, and he had to back off and he had to save. So that's the example there of what the Honda does compared to the Chevy at this point. So that's something that's really standing out here as well. Back to the box score. Palou does what he does. He spins in qualifying, qualifies 12th. A lot of grid penalties, so kind of a mismatched starting grid. But goes from 11th to 4th. I thought he was going to win. I'll admit I was wrong just in my head. You know, I knew Grosjean was saving fuel at the beginning of the last restart. I didn't think Ericsson could work his way back from whatever it was, 7th up to the front. Or actually, after he had to make that stop. I still didn't think he could make his way back from 7th, and certainly before he stopped. Yeah, I guess by the time he did stop, I had seen he was picking up, in some cases, 3 seconds a lap back to their decision and was massively quicker than everyone else. So before the stop, I'd say 2 laps before the stop, I thought, well, maybe he's quick enough to salvage a top 5 or a podium out of this. I don't think I was still thinking about winning. By the time he stopped and saw the gap that he had created up to 13 seconds or so, and I mentioned McLaughlin because I thought he was the one that was going to be the one to beat at the end. Palou gets by him and others, and I thought Palou's going to win because he's second. Surely he's going to catch him, but he must have had to save a little bit of fuel. I haven't read the full briefing yet, if just the car wasn't awesome or he was on the hard tire, I think, at the end, so maybe, yeah, the soft was better. There wasn't a lot of disparity between the two different tire compounds between the soft and the hard. Rough day for Ray Hall, Letterman Lanigan. Louis Foster did what he told me he was going to do. I said, what's your biggest concern? Yellows. He said, if it stays green, I'm going to check out. I said, okay, that's bold, but he did. He was pulling away, and he wasn't even going full go. He was pulling away and still saving enough to be able to do it on 2 stops. He was on his way into the pit lane when the caution came out on lap 31, I guess, is when, Marcus Armstrong got spun there in turn 5. And I don't know how close he was, but he was pitting on that particular lap. So then all of a sudden, he and others, I think Dixon and one other, slid back to somewhere in the teens. But then that's where we saw, wow, you can pass. Foster is on a charge. And I almost felt like at that point, if you watch basketball, have you heard the phrase heat check, when someone is hot and just starts hitting shots, and all of a sudden, this happens in NBA games, it happens in pickup games. You all of a sudden are taking contested shots, you're pulling up from 28 feet, and we call it a heat check. And then often it's an air ball, it's a brick, whatever. Maybe even hit one of them, but eventually that luck runs out or your hot streak runs out. I kind of felt that's what Louis was thinking about there. He's just blowing by people and maybe lost a little patience. And I say that as someone who doesn't drive race cars. It might also be argued from people that do, is that, no, you got to take advantage when the opportunity is there. And he was trying to pass the guy who ultimately won the race, the other really fast car in Marcus Ericsson. You got a chance to get by him. You got to take it. And then what Foster and Kirkwood and others would say is that these corners were unfortunate. There basically is a little bit of a square ridge because the blocks are straight. Some street courses have molds where the concrete is curved, and the Washington, D.C., some I don't know if this was an organizer for the event, tweeted a picture of the rounded barriers that we're going to see, and that's much more conducive. If you get it just a little bit wrong in that circumstance and brush, it might still cause you to break a toe link or wishbone damage or something else, but it's less likely to just shoot you across the track like it did to Louis Foster, like it did to Kyle Kirkwood as well, and in your race with a really, really hard crash. So feel for the Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan team, because they had really good pace, and all they have to show is a 9th-place finish for Graham Rahal in this weekend. But Foster was really on it. The massive bad luck continues for ECR. I think mechanicals, or did actually, what happened to Rasmussen? Yeah, he had contact at some point as well. So they had a good day, a potential good day go away. Kyle Collette. So here's something interesting, and one of the things that's going to be important is this leader circle going down to the end, and Kyle Collette is very much in that fight right now. He is caught up in contact in the opening lap. He appears to be done. They come out 20-some laps down, and because there's so much attrition, Kyle Collette finishes 19th instead of 25th, picks up 6 extra points, and those 6 points might help AJ Foy Racing, and maybe Kyle Collette, if he returns, might help them to about $1.7 million, because they are on the outside. And the reason we may look at this is because there's no championship to speak of. We'll do that in a moment, but it's over. Pipolo still extends it without winning the race to where he could conceivably clinch this weekend. I've got that scenario in a moment. But Kyle Collette is 23rd. He is now 6 points behind Christian Rasmussen. So even how badly that went for Collette, he still shortened the gap just a little bit, and it would have been 12. He would have scored 5 points, finishing last. He instead finishes 19th and scores 11 points. So instead of 12 back, he's 6 back, and those 1.2 points really matter for these teams that unfortunately often finish near the back. This Milwaukee round in 2 weeks is critical for Rasmussen. He could win both races. They could have more mechanicals or a crash and finish in the back, and that may cost ECR $1.7 million. So that's the fight. And Schumacher is still in it. He's 13 back. And Stingray Robb, with an 11th place finish, has gotten Hunkos Havlinger in the chase. I thought they had no chance, but they are now 14 points behind Rasmussen. After that, I really think it's just those teams going for one spot. Dennis Hauger is maybe a little bit iffy, but he's at 189 points to 164, so that feels pretty safe. What did happen is Romain Grosjean, by finishing second, they're out of the danger zone for not making the leader circle, being in the top 22. So that was another takeaway I had from this weekend as well. And speaking of the championship, Russ Thompson, our statistician, sent this along. Here are some notes of interest. 133 points is the largest lead in history with 4 races to go. The previous largest margin with 4 left, 100. Dan Weldon in 2005, who clinched with a race remaining. It got a little bit tighter, but not much. I think he won by 83 that year. So the magic number this weekend is 162. If Palou has a 162-point lead, and that is feasible. So that means if he gains 29 points on Kirkwood, Palou, Lundgaard, all within reach, if he's ahead of all of them by 162, he is mathematically the champion. He very easily could be essentially the champion, knowing, as long as he makes it to the races and scores 5 points, because after this weekend, you're still talking another 20 points to be scored that you're going to get by just showing up to the races. If he wins, the others have to finish in the top 9 to stay alive. Or looking at it another way, Palou can finish 12th in every remaining race on average and still win the title. So there you go on that. A sip of my tea from my Toronto Motorsports mug. All right, let's go to the Xbox and Twitter questions in no particular order. This one actually I think came in a while back from JP Larson. Apologies if I've missed this, but have you heard anything on when DRR is expected to announce the driver? P.S. I've gotten 2 friends of my nephew watching IndyCar this season. I also got them to subscribe to Trackside Extra. Thank you, JP. I do not know the timeline. I do not know if that is finalized. I do not know if they want to finalize their engine partner before they announce the driver. That might make some sense because you'd like to have your driver wearing the shirt with the engine logo. You notice that Dreyer and Reinbold, when they announced they were buying one of the Rahal Letterman Lanigan charters, didn't have any engine manufacturer logos attached to that. So I don't know if that needs to come. Probably doesn't, but it's usually about signing contracts. I've heard nothing different. I still think it's going to be Connor Daly, but I don't know that. I don't know that. And as we all know in motorsport, or most of us know, just because we think it's going to happen, expect it's going to happen, does not mean it's going to happen. It does not always happen. You want signed contracts. Sometimes you want more than that as well. Matt Wilson says, at MattWilson85, you guys thought Portland TV numbers were bad. No one even knows what Markham is. Hate to say it, but I bet we'll have the first sub 500K TV viewers this weekend. Ooh, I'd love to bet Matt on that one. I don't know what the numbers are. We're taping this at, right now, it's 4:50 Eastern time on Monday. People may not believe this, but we don't get any tip as to what the TV numbers are. My guess is right now, Eric Shanks doesn't even know what the numbers, the CEO of Fox, by Monday afternoon. The way I understand how ratings get found out, I think you can pay Nielsen extra if you want an immediate overnight. And for big events, the Super Bowl and things like that, and maybe you don't even have to pay. Maybe just the industry wants that number out there as quickly as possible. So sometimes a number for something really big will get released the next day. Generally, it's sometime Tuesday at earliest, and even then, they might be preliminary numbers from just the biggest markets. And lately, sometimes it's been on Wednesday. before we see the numbers. And I usually find out from Adam Stern at Sports Business Journal on social media. A lot of times, especially when it's good, we'll get on our group text something from management or maybe from Fox PR, or maybe I see something from INDYCAR to tell the team owners, and that gets shared with me. Hey, we've got good news. It's going to go out in 20 minutes, but we just want to let you know ahead of time. So I've heard nothing of this, but I think you're probably wrong, Matt, because people like chaos. It doesn't matter that no one knows where Markham is. It was an IndyCar race. That's what matters. And also what matters is the head-to-head competition. There was no NASCAR Cup race. I'm not an expert on TV numbers, but I knew the Portland rating was not going to be good because you were head-to-head with NASCAR Cup. Even on cable, NASCAR, now it's shrunk. They used to get 5 times the audience IndyCar gets. Now it's a lot of times only twice. And sometimes, and this next weekend might be one of them, you might not see that. By the way, IndyCar outrated wherever NASCAR was at the weekend of the Nashville race with rain delay coverage of 2.9 million. And that's what the race rating would have been, or even better, had we had better fortune with the weather. So I can't predict what the rating is going to be this weekend, but I'm optimistic. So, my hope for Portland was if you somehow get 1 million, that's going to be great. But, you turn out that the race wasn't super entertaining. And I love Alex Palou, but when Alex Palou gets in front, that's not good for ratings. We're going to have to figure out a way as an industry to combat that. I think we need to talk more about other things than the championship, because as long as Alex Palou is involved, I guess it could change with the new car in 2028. I don't see anything changing. This is, you can start to talk about him being on that short list, and you may be able to argue that this is blasphemy, but might he be the greatest of all time? We can't say that definitively for another 5 or 6 years, but no one is doing or has done what he is doing right now. And while I think we all enjoy watching greatness, not everyone's into that. They want uncertainty. And when they feel like they know who's going to win and the victory lane interview is going to be the same as it always is, we lose audience. Bigger than that, though, is head-to-head. You're trying to avoid head-to-head with Formula One, head-to-head with NASCAR, head-to-head with massive events like the Masters, like the NFL, things like that. So Portland was unavoidable, and Fox knows that. IndyCar knows that, but sometimes there's just not a way around it, and you're going to go head-to-head, but it's a lot less than it used to be, and it wasn't on Sunday. So I have optimism. If they made it through the first 13 or 14 laps, which wasn't great, I have optimism that we're at least going to get a respectable number. Is it 1 million? I'm hoping that it's more than that, but we shall see. What this weekend is, I have no idea. There's not a particular lead-in. That's the other thing that matters most. If you can get a really good lead-in to your event, that matters significantly. Jen Stewart says, I really, really hope Indy and Fox are sending people now to D.C. to inspect how ready they are, because otherwise it's not going to go well next week. Put a fire under the butts of the site builders now to avoid a Groundhog Day sitch. Well, I'm not worried about that, and I can't guarantee anything that there might not be a late snafu, but we've seen pictures of the track far closer than it was on Friday at 11 a.m., 2 hours after track activity was supposed to begin. So this is a different group, and the way this works is you hire a promoter to do your event in most cases, and in this case it's Green Savory. They handle all of the contractors, and they're responsible for the unions. They do the track build. IndyCar is like the circus. You want the circus to come to your town, you pay the circus to come, and then you have the ability to sell tickets, sell signage, sell sponsorship, sell hot dogs to get that money back. But someone is responsible for providing the venue. I think the same thing as a concert. When a big band gets hired to play at Gamebridge Fieldhouse, they're not organizing the event. Now, you're at a stadium, so that's not that hard. But say you're doing an outside venue, there is a promoter that is putting all that together. The band's job is to show up. It's not quite the same with IndyCar. They're still partners in the event, but you can't just say, well, they should have known by Tuesday. Well, the track build begins when it builds, and you're trying to wait as long as possible to disrupt the local community and active streets for as short a time as possible. So I've been to places before where on Thursday, it looks a little bit in peril. Now, we were hearing by Thursday morning, no, this is real. There are real issues involved here. I think I had other questions that we'll get more deeply into that as well. But the DC race is different. This one is promoted by IndyCar with help by, I think it's Monumental Sports that promotes events, and they also happen to own the Washington Wizards, the Washington Mystics, the Washington Capitals. Deep sourcing in that area. So it's a different group involved for this. There's been more planning for this event than any other IndyCar race in history, I would say, because the Indy 500 is at its own venue. But I think from Fox standpoint, what we're planning for production and site visits and everything, I think they might tell you we have spent more time on this than the Indy 500 because it's new, because there are things that you just can't control out of that. So that is, I don't have concerns about the track being ready. Something unforeseen could happen. You've got manhole covers, things like that, but the track is going to be built and it's going to look ready. Could there be a small snafu? There can be. That does happen in temporary circuits. John Resnick says, I listen to Trackside Extra. Appreciate your gentle questioning of circuit readiness proved prescient. This is an inexcusable logistical failure for IndyCar. They had plenty of time to plan this inaugural track and drop the ball, not what you expect of a world-class series. So again, back to the other point. Now, this may be a point of discussion moving forward as to who IndyCar trusts with promoting their events, and that's a discussion I'm not privy to at this point. But there's no way, even on Tuesday or Wednesday, IndyCar is going to know. And I know IndyCar people were on site on Tuesday to help in any way that they can. Ultimately, what I think happened from just watching, so they were behind. They were behind on everything, and I don't know if that's because they got access later. I'm sure there are things, I'm going to guess at least, there are things that are out of the Green Savory Group's control. And that's unfortunate. Are you dealing with unions? Are you dealing with suppliers that were late? I don't know. So they were going to be late having everything in place. And that wasn't great. But I didn't think it was going to be a disaster. When people asked me Thursday night, Friday morning, I said, no, we're going to be on track. It's going to be unfortunate for the support series. Their weekend is going to get condensed. But I think we'll be on track by 2 o'clock. They'll run a USF 2000 series to kind of clean off the track. And then IndyCar will go somewhere, maybe a little bit late, somewhere around 3 o'clock. Well, then it turns out that not all the materials showed up. Now, I don't know if this was bad math or a supplier failed Green Savory. And I wish they would have been a little more transparent on that. If I'm them, I blame a supplier, because ultimately what happened, they didn't have enough tire bundles is what I observed, because I know what's required. And it's more than just a couple of tires stacked at the end of a fast section. That's not safe. That's why the FIA didn't approve that. And that's what we were waiting for. And it became a point where there are not any available. We're not getting out on track on Friday. The second point, I think the hairpin, everything I had seen, they were planning a different corner. Turns out, became very interesting. I don't know what they're going to do for that moving forward, but the biggest issue was the tire bundle. It's not safe for any race cars to go on the track. IndyCar can't control that. They are trusting that the promoter has done the math and has acquired what they need to acquire, and it's Friday afternoon before anybody finds out that circumstance. So I don't think this is really an IndyCar situation on that. What the long-term ramifications are, I do not know. I'm sure that there are contracts in place. Are there stipulations involved? If you don't meet the terms of those requirements, there are 4 events that are a part of the Green Savory partnership with IndyCar, and they're important events, especially St. Petersburg. I think this Markham event can be a pillar of the schedule. This was a great event. One, IndyCar needs a race in Canada. Canadians like IndyCar. One of the great things about going to this event every year is you turn on local television, which the sports channel is sort of the national television coverage, TSN. They have reporters doing 2 and 3 minute pieces on that race. The local newscast has reporters out at the racetrack. It is a big deal in the community. I had a little fear that people wouldn't get the notice that it's moved out of downtown an exhibition place. They did get the notice. I heard there was good money spent, good promotion in Markham, in Toronto to spread the word. It's not that hard to get there. So that event needs to continue. I love Mid-Ohio. That's a traditional race. Portland, let's be fully honest here. A lot of people, especially when they see the presentation at a place like Arlington, you're trying to present that you're a big-time motorsports event to bring more money into the sport from sponsors. It could probably be spruced up a little bit. As promised, the track's fine. It's not always entertaining, but it can be fine. And we need a spot in the Pacific Northwest, so I hope there is an opportunity there. And I say that knowing that it costs money to do these things, and there's not a huge amount of people there. So what can we do there to create more revenue to allow for the presentation to be a little bit better? That's why a lot of people have said, I need to see what's going to happen. I think Portland's going to be back next year because I don't know they're to the point yet where they have some of the new venues they want for the future. But if you get to the point where something is going to be dropped, unfortunately, that's one of those where you just have to say TBD on what that's going to be. Patrick Stankus asks, is there a possibility that we see Dale Coyne Racing retain both drivers for next year, especially given all the unexpected turnover during this season on the engineering managerial side? I think there is a chance of that. I would think Romain Grosjean went a long way towards solidifying his opportunity next year. I asked Romain, he said he's talked to Dale a couple of times. He's supposed to talk to him again a little bit later, and I actually saw him after the race as well. It comes down to money. The answer is always money. Do they secure the sponsorship again with Todd Alt and his companies for next year, and who do they want? Dennis Hauger doesn't bring as much funding as he did this year. I think Andretti was paying for a lot of that. You can see Namo on the side. That's a partner that Dennis had in Indy Next, but I don't think that's a massive amount of money there, and it's not enough. So where is it going to come from? My best guess is they're sort of hiring one driver, and the other driver is going to bring budget to that seat. So ultimately, I think there is a chance there, but my best guess is only one of the two returns next year. I know there's interest in Dennis, though, so I do think he has a chance to stick, and that's probably the best spot for Romain. He has fit in well there and has had some results at times. Lori Momwife says another weekend in IndyCar sees Palou increase his lead by 23 points. He crashes in the Fast 12, still finishes fourth. Can we just give him the Astor Cup already? Yes, we can. No, we can't. Even if he mathematically clinches in D.C., they're not going to give him the cup until Laguna Seca. But yes, there's no reason to go through the charade of, he's starting. And I know it's part of entertainment. I think we did that at the top of the broadcast because there's always uncertainty, and smarter people than me are looking into these things, and that's the way it should be done. But this is a podcast with IndyCar faithful, and we're not going to mislead you, nor have we all season. He is going to win the championship. We have known for a long time he is going to win the championship. Thomas C. says, is there any chance of a Linus Lundqvist seat in 2027? I think so, but I'm not hugely optimistic unless Linus has come through and found some supporters to help beat the budget that other talented drivers have. I think Rinus VK might be one of the few. Grosjean could be in that camp too. I don't know if Grosjean brings any personal sponsors. He might, that helps pay his salary a bit. Sometimes that's the way it works. But Rinus might be about the only one that's not been signed yet. Well, Christian Lundgaard has not been signed yet. I still think he's going to end up at Ganassi. So he'd be in that category of drivers that need to bring nothing but their helmets. I think everyone else is going to have to bring at least something to help shorten the budget in that frame. Chris Stinson, do you think bringing back the Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt trophies for top road and street and oval drivers would make following the standings more interesting? It could. It'd be something for us to talk about, but they did do this a while back, and it didn't seem to get a whole lot of traction. You get into, we're trying to make it less confusing for more people. And I love sports car racing, but we have a lot of championships in sports car racing. We've got the manufacturer championship. We've got the drivers championship. We have the team championship. We have the Michelin Endurance Cup championship, which scores points in the long races every 4 hours. Yeah. So that gets to be a bit much. Simple is probably always better. It maybe, if maybe that's something we need to think about as long as Palou is going like he is. And, you look at it after Palou, if he is indeed a bot, I love that graphic I saw last week. If he is, Felix Rosenqvist would have won 4 more races. But think about this. If there's no Palou, we have second to third, 4 points, then another 2 points, then 18 points. So your top 4 are separated by 24 points right now. Top 4 in the championship, and the top 3 are separated by 6. We should really have the Palou championship and then a class championship the rest of the way. Jay Hank, 50-50. Any more info on Marcus Armstrong's incident after spinning in turn 5? It sure looked like he tried to beat the pace car despite being given the hold signal by the safety team. Any chance he sees further post-race penalties? My guess is no. I think if a driver were to do that again, because I'm not aware of Marcus ever doing that. And I thought Townsend explained it well on the broadcast. It's a big no-no. He's got the stop sign there from the safety worker in front of him there. But he knows if he doesn't beat out the pace car, his race is effectively over. So he's trying to do that. The safety worker is doing what he's told by race control, and it's, nope, pace car is too close, too late. He's going to have to sit and wait. But that's what he's trying to do there at that point. He got to stop and hold. Race was already done at that point. We'll probably get a little talking to. As long as he reacts okay to that, and says, yep, I'm sorry, I had a brain fade, I thought I could make it, my mistake, it'll never happen again. No, I think that's probably the end of it with Marcus. From Muhammad at Moke Motorsport, the rumors are there, he says, from Dutch media, that there will soon be news that it will be called Hollinger Racing next year, with a lot of investment and a partnership with McLaren if that happens. He says, if that happens, how strong can Rinus be? They can finally be fast at street races, plus they're fast road and oval, and especially for 2028, this is a really good seat with that partnership. Muhammad, I like your way of thinking, and I've kind of said this for a while now. Now, I get it. If you're a Rinus VK fan, and if you're Rinus VK, if you have a chance at the number 9 for Ganassi, you're going to take it. I get that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be Christian Lundgaard in that circumstance. So once that happens, then I think this is a good spot for him to be. There are still some other possibilities. I don't think the 66 is an option. That's the next best seat there. You could say, well, maybe Foyt if they retain the Penske alliance. But that's not a guarantee. And Juncos Hollinger Racing, or whatever it's going to be called, to your original question, I don't know. I hear these rumors too, but until I see an announcement, I'm probably not going to mess around with that too much. I know the goal has been to bring in outside investment so they can hire 2 drivers. And I know one of them they want to be Rinus VeeKay. And I think you can make a case from Rinus's perspective that he might be better off staying there, especially if that happens, especially if they have more money and there is a second teammate that is hired or brings just a little bit of budget to finish it out, even without the McLaren partnership. But then if you added McLaren, yeah. And then, hey, maybe he's the heir apparent to Scott Dixon at McLaren when Scott retires in 1, 2, 3, 7 years, whatever it might be. So I'm anxious to see what will happen and what the timeline is on that. And that may be something we're waiting to see when Ganassi announces someone, and then we're going to be waiting to see when Rinus announces something. But if indeed Rinus were to stay there, if there is thought of a partner coming in, an investor coming in, if Ricardo Juncos is being bought out, which I don't know what the circumstances there, do they need to wait until all that is finalized before they're announcing drivers? Mike Stoops says, looked like a good turnout for the race. I know it's only one, but what's your sense of the vibe for the weekend and the future of the event? I hope to go next year. P.S. Now seeing it during the race, I like the hairpin for the action chaos it created. What about you? I've talked about this a lot, but I think this event has a tremendous potential, and I would highly recommend it for people that are thinking about it. And I am wondering about the hairpin. I believe there was another plan. I don't know how much that would change things, but we do like chaos. It's so slow going through there. I'm just not smart enough to know what that changes for the trajectory through that corner. My guess is they put it the way it was supposed to be, but not necessarily. Maybe it worked out perfectly fine, and it did open up some opportunities and some choices on exit. And Mike also asked, do you have any behind the scenes on how it went with Green Savary? I think I've talked about that from that standpoint. He says, I would think IndyCar would have been furious behind closed doors. Well, you notice the statement from Doug Bowles. So IndyCar did take a high road, and it wasn't, over the top or anything, but something along the lines of, we're really disappointed that our promoter didn't have the track ready or something like that. I should probably look and see exactly what it said, because I believe I did do a screenshot on that after it was released over the weekend. Oh, and I know a lot of people asked, why didn't the event say sorry and apologize? My best guess is that they're advised by their attorneys not to do that. Unfortunately, if you apologize, does that open up the floodgates for lawsuits in that regard? Looks like I didn't do a screenshot of it. But yeah, you get the sense. There was just one little point saying, we're disappointed the promoter didn't have the track ready. And there was an apology in that from IndyCar's standpoint. What else? I feel like we've gone. Somebody asked why did the trophy ceremony not get aired? There were 10 minutes left before the top of the hour. Yes, but we were already 20 minutes over the broadcast window because the number of cautions and the race took a little longer. I believe the contract states, I know Fox now owns the series or a third of it, but it's 2.5 hour window is what is stated for most events. I don't know what we had extra, but you know how annoyed we get as IndyCar fans when something runs long and everyone asks, oh, why are you showing a chat after the end of the previous game? Get to our event. That's how the next event was going to feel. It may have been an infomercial. You may have been giving it back to the affiliates, but that's their time. That's their money. Basically, the rules say you get to the finish, because they could have said, we're going off when the checker flag flies. We don't owe you a podium interview even, but they still talked to the top 3. I don't feel like there was anything else we had to see. Sometimes there's a reason to go to the event. That's what promoters still have to their advantage, but there are things that you get by going. As great as television is, you don't always get by watching on television, and that might be one of those circumstances. Nick Kreiser asked about Newgard and Power hitting the wall. Why didn't it hurt their hands? Did they change the steering? So sometimes it's just luck. I also know this has been a work in progress for many years. I remember going to a seminar, I think it was Dr. Terry Trammell, talking to the drivers probably 10 or 15 years ago at a drivers meeting, is this is what we're working on to try to lessen the impact and to lessen injuries when you still have your hands on the wheel. Still best to get it off, but they do what they can within the parameters of the current car to improve that. And fortunately, now I did hear, I think Louis Foster might have a sore thumb or a sore wrist, so hopefully he is okay when we get to DC this coming week. Kyle Gregory asked, have there been 6 teams in the Fast Six before? I am almost certain. I think we've seen this several times. Doesn't happen very often, but I do believe, I didn't look it up, but I feel pretty confident we've had that happen in recent history as well. All right, time for the California Closets calendar. Washington, D.C., 2-day show. IROC is also there. That is going to air on Fox 1. You got some former NASCAR stars, I think Elio and Kanan. Some have done both, like Tony Stewart, are going to be there as well. Fox 1 has that coverage. IndyCar practice on Saturday, 9 o'clock on FS1. The second at 1 o'clock, so it's really going to be like last weekend, a condensed Saturday. Second practice, 1 o'clock on FS2. Qualifying, 5 o'clock on FS2. Sunday, the warm-up at 9 o'clock on FS1. And then an extended pre-race show. This is, I think, going to be really cool. The same people that produce the Super Bowl, that produce our Indy 500 pre-race, have been working on this for months. It's not just going to be about IndyCar racing. It's going to be about the history of our country, I think. Tom Rinaldi is going to be there. He does great work. That's worth the watch right there. Chris Myers will be there. Elio is going to be a part of our pre-race coverage. Danica Patrick, Jamie Little is joining us, and our regular crew as well. So 11:30 pre-race on Fox, and the green flag is coming up at 1 o'clock, or a little bit after 1 o'clock for the green flag. 250 miles, probably a 4-stop race. I haven't done the math on that yet, but it should be fun coming up this weekend. Radio show is on Wednesday night. If you got a question from what we chatted about, send that in. We'll talk about it Wednesday night, live, plausibly live, couple of hours delayed. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan in Indianapolis. And podcast will be up. Remember, it is a separate subscription for that as well. And remember, California Closets is designed with the same precision you expect on race day. Exceptional quality, elite craftsmanship, and top-notch service. Thank you for joining. Tell your friends, subscribe to the YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Maybe we'll do something with video again on the track walk on Friday. It was tough for me to upload the video, though. I'm technically challenged just a little bit. But we thank you for finding us and greatly appreciate you listening or watching Trackside Extra.